I don't really know how to start this video, and if I'm honest, I don't really know where this video is going or what it's going to be called or anything like that, but I'm feeling a bit under the weather. I'm a bit bunged up and feeling sick because I am sick to death of not seeing bass players rocking out on stage. There's nothing worse for me than when I go to a gig of a band that I really like, and maybe I like them enough, I've heard their music, but I haven't seen what they look like, or I haven't seen them live at all or anything like that. And I go and see them, maybe at a festival. I go and see them, no bass player. Low end being pumped out on a backing track. And nowadays, more than ever, it seems that the bass player is becoming a sort of rare breed and kind of the most disposable member of the band. Obviously, I don't think that's right. I'm going to try in this video to put forward a kind of cohesive rant, just talking about this topic and just to spur on conversation in the comments down below to see what you guys think about this as well and what we can do to combat it. Or even, look to the future and how can we adapt? I don't have the answers. I'm not sure if anyone does really, but I just thought it was interesting to talk about. So let's start with the why. Why would somebody think a bass player is redundant and why would they want to replace them? There's no rules. We don't need guitars. We don't need vocals. We don't need drums. You can do whatever you want. It's art. It's subjective. There are bands out there that don't have bass players at all. Like, think of the White Stripes. They don't have a bass player, and live it sounds fantastic. So do we need one? But when you've got bands that have a very specific sound and are tuned in and that is their sound, then the argument is more, would they sound better with a bass player? But if we are just going by a pink by numbers, bricks and mortar rock or metal band, it seems that the bass player is now being ejected whilst still being used live. So a core fundamental of why this happens is that it saves money. If there's a 4-piece band that only have to split the money between 3 people, ultimately, you're going to make more money the less people you have to pay and the less people you have to outsource and hire in if you don't have a bass player in your band. Now, of course, that does kind of contradict itself a little bit because it means that less members, they share the costs less as well. But often the cost of a bass player is what lets us down. Another reason why is that there are just less bass players out there. I've been interviewing people at festivals before and I organised to speak to the bass player and I've had responses before saying, yeah, but they don't really know much about bass or they don't feel like they'd have much to talk about. And that's fine. Guitar players picking up those 4 or 5 strings and slamming down some low end live. That's better than no bass player. But it does mean that we've got these people that aren't as passionate maybe and just kind of filling a hole. There's got to be a better way of saying that. What I'm basically trying to say is that the parts they're playing might just be the same as the guitars. It might just be root notes and that's fine. But it does make the bass a little more disposable because 90% of people are just hearing guitar. They don't understand necessarily that what you're hearing is both guitar and bass merged together, especially in some mixes when you don't have a bass tone that's really like punching through the mix. If it's really blending in, and that's great. Both punching through the mix and blending in are fantastic styles of bass tone that ultimately elevates the sound of a band. But if they're just playing that meat and potatoes, someone might think, do we actually need someone to be playing this, or could this just go on a backing track? And what's on the backing track? Is it actually a bass player from the studio? Is it just a bedroom musician filling in on the bass and playing those parts? Or is it a digital bass? And that brings me on to my next point, because there are various plugins from very famous bass players that are essentially sabotaging their own audience, like Jacob Umansky and Nolly Getgood. Fantastic players, incredible players, and they have absolutely done more good than bad for their community. I'm not saying this to come at their throats. I'm not saying that you should do that either. I just think it's funny when they release these plugins that mean that, especially metal producers, they no longer need to get someone to play the parts. They can just program it in to save time and save money in the long run. So the rise in bedroom producers and the technology alongside it has really enabled the bass to be the first thing to be kind of lost from the list of musicians required. Next up is drums, arguably, with more and more programmable drums being widely available and sounding really, really good and even more natural as the years go on. But the guitar we're not really there yet in terms of plugins that can just replace a guitarist. Am I convincing myself to give up the bass right now? No. I'm going to take a little quote from Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
The bass is like the gluten in the bread, and the bread is the song. So that means like the studio is the oven, and we're cooking it up. But it ain't gonna taste right unless the bread has gluten in it. We ain't making no gluten-free bread.
Gluten-free band, White Stripes.
The Doors.
Who?
The Doors.
But never,
Doors didn't have the gluten.
they had a gluten substitute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The White Stripes don't even have a substitute.
Yeah, they didn't have the gluten.
Gluten-free.
Black Keys, no gluten. And you know what I say? No gluten, no gluten.
So essentially here, Dave is comparing bass to the gluten within the bread. Not only does it mesh it all together and makes it work, it makes it just taste nice. Yeah, you could have it without it. Sure, that's absolutely fine. But is it better? No. I've also been to a lot of shows, in particular a lot of festivals actually, where when there's no bass player, I can really notice it in the sounds. Now, I'll put my hands up. That might be because I can see there's no bass player, and so I'm going, meh, oh, I can tell. It's kind of like this placebo effect. If I was blind, maybe I wouldn't been able to tell at all. But to me, everything just sounds more gelled together when you've got an actual bass being played right there. Often when bands are running backing tracks, they're just sending one feed to front of house, which includes all of the bass guitar, and that gets mixed as one with the band. Now, that means that you're not able to independently mix that bass with the guitars. So you're not getting that gel between the guitars and the drums, especially when you're playing a festival stage where you often don't have your own tech. They've got someone working that stage for the day. They are not going to fine tune you. You are getting a line check, good to go, off we go. And they will kind of mix you as they go often. So it just means that you have less flexibility with that mix. And the bass is arguably the most important thing about that live mix. It's mostly why we exist, you know, to give the audience that feel from the music as well, and the groove that comes with the locking in the drums and the guitars. And that feel is why I think backing track bass is just lost on me. And I just don't think that benefits the music. It sounds so like old man yells at clouds when I say that. I'm going to be saying that, you know, you have to have tube amps next. But I just get this feeling that without bass, there is no feeling. Obviously, I'm mega biased with this topic, and I don't want to see bass players be made redundant in this industry at all. A message from a bass player to the industry is just think deeper than just what the bass is there to serve. Like, think about what it actually brings to the table and what you're missing out on if you don't have it. Like I said at the start, there are no rules. I'm not saying that you can never, it has to always be real bass. It's all about synth bass. Keyboards fill that role sometimes. There are bands of just two musicians that don't need a bass and sound amazing live. It's all subjective, really, but this is just my opinion on what I'm feeling right now. And like I said, I don't know who this is going out to or who's going to care about this, but just thought I'd post a little rant for you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And make sure whilst you're there, if you haven't done so already, to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can be notified on my latest reviews and bass-related videos. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.